Rabotai, we are continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, Hilchot Tefillin, Siman Lametet, and Daf Samech Het Amud Aleph of regular prints of Mishna Berurah, and we are up to Seif Vav. Maran writes a very interesting and relevant question. I just actually checked to see if this is how relevant it is, and it's very relevant. You could buy tefillin, hundreds of them, on eBay. I didn't know. I just, because of this Maran, I just checked this. Is it mutar to buy tefillin on eBay? You have no idea. It's basically anonymous who's selling it to you. It's not your local Judaica with a long beard and a lot of peot. Is some faceless guy that you hope they're Jewish, maybe they're Jewish, and you can buy tefillin on Amazon. Now, we spoke when we did Hilchot Tzitzit, buy Tzitzit on Amazon, because or on any of these online things, unless it's one of the Judaicas that are known, because as I mentioned it to you, you have this techelet tzitziot that they actually have tied the entire thing, and they sell it with a clip that you're supposed to clip it to your beged, like which is completely pasul. I mean, someone knows how to tie it. They've tied it. We assume that's not just some blue dye, which probably it is. It's not a real techelet. You know, it's probably a fake techelet also, because nobody that actually creates techelet would allow such a thing, and they're making money off of simple believing, gullible people. So you never know if you could really trust that. So says Maran, Nimtzu biad eno Yehudi. A goy comes and says, I have tefillin for sale. Do you say, is it a fake tefillin, and therefore you should not buy it? Or do you say that perhaps it's a kosher tefillin, and this guy found it on a bus when someone left it or stole it from somebody, and so on and so forth, right? We mentioned once before the very unique case that actually happened, that some fellow, his car was broken in, and his tefillin bag was stolen from his car. And later on that month, he found his own tefillin being auctioned. I don't remember where it was online, and he just contacted the police, and they were able to get it back and whatever. I'm not sure if the guy was arrested or not. He pleaded guilty or not. I'm not sure, but that usually never happens. Unless HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to. But nevertheless, do you say that the guy stole it from a Jew and therefore it's a kosher tefillin and I could buy it? Or do you not say that? Says Maran, En yadua miktavam kesherim, they're kasher. You could buy the tefillin from a goy and you could put it on with bracha, no problem. Why? Because we assume that the goy, a regular goy in our generation, does not know how to make a tefillin. It's too complicated. Now the Shach in Yoreh De'ah writes that even for Sefer Torah nowadays, the goyim don't know how to make Sefer Torah. It's not that they are well versed in safrut. Tefillin is much more complicated because there's the batim and the shin and the halachot. We mentioned the right side versus left side. Which one is 3? Which one is 4? A goy, you need to know a lot of halachot to make tefillin. It just reminds me of this Chinese guy that wanted to make a quick buck by cheating on kosher symbols. He found that the Jews are willing to pay a lot of money as the market for kosher things. So he wanted to make to make brands of different things and just fake kosher brands and sell it. But he made a grave mistake and was caught immediately because he put OUP. That means kosher for Passover on bread. So he was immediately, of course, caught because because he did it under the one thing that you can't put OU for Pesach on is a nice, nice fat bread. That's of course not kosher for Passover. So, but again, there is OU has a team that works on this because they have certify over 1 million products, and to have fraud, people who are out there to make a quick buck, there are a lot of them. So you have to be careful, and they flag those and they send things out. But nevertheless, for tefillin, it's too complicated. People are not going to be able to make a proper tefillin, so therefore it's kasher. Shach says that nowadays even Sefer Torah is going to be following the same thing, and this is the Shach in Hilchot Sefer Torah in Yoreh De'ah. So nevertheless, the tefillin nowadays would be really the nafkamina would be whether or not you could buy tefillin online from these people. Again, not necessarily recommended, but if you do find it, it would be perhaps if the odds are that this is a tefillin, old tefillin that they're selling, or their bar mitzvah tefillin that they never put on, and after the bar mitzvah, and now they're selling it online, fine, but still you have to be mindful of the fact that the tefillin perhaps has to be checked, because the quality of the tefillin you don't necessarily know, but nevertheless it would be something to be mindful of, that perhaps me'ikar adin those tefillin would be kasher. Says Maran in Seif Zayin, en lokhin tefillin umezuzot sfarim min hakutim yoter mikted men. Now that we established that perhaps the goy has stolen it, the object of kedusha, the Sefer Torah, tefillin, mezuzah, is stolen when the goy is selling it. So we don't want them to be encouraged to steal more and to blackmail the Jews, say, I know this is your holy object and you got to buy it for whatever price I put on it. So it becomes a whole market of them stealing and selling. So we don't want them to charge more than its actual market value. So we don't buy it more than market value from a goy, even though that it may cause a Sefer Torah to be disrespected when a goy has it. But nevertheless, we don't want to encourage theft. So therefore, we don't buy it more than its price. That's the Shulchan. The Mishna Berurah says, now you could buy it a little bit more than the price, but just a little bit more than price, but not something that's significant. So market value plus a little bit, but not an exuberant, not a very high price that would be encouraging them to steal more and make it a market. Now, even though that in the time of Chazal, Sefer Torah would be pasul, because we said Sefer Torah shktavan min yiganez, is Sefer Torah that was written by Akum, was nimtza b'yad Akum yiganez. So here you are basically paying the price to buy it and bury it, just because you don't want the goy to have it, because it's going to come to disgrace. You all remember a few months ago that this fellow found a Sefer Torah on the street, literally on the floor of the street. The goy had stolen it, probably taken all the nice, silver parts, accessories that comes with the Sefer Torah, and then basically threw the Sefer Torah out in the street, right? And somebody found it and returned it to the Beit Knesset. So what does a goy got to do? Either he's going to sell it, or they're going to trash it. So you don't want the Sefer Torah to chas v'shalom come to the bizayon. Therefore, we're willing to pay its price, even though the halakha would be yiganiz. Now, we mentioned according to the Shach says even nowadays, even Sefer Torah that the boy finds is going to be kasher, because they don't even know how to write a Sefer Torah and they don't want to bother themselves with it. Now, there's one important thing to be mentioned here, which you probably have seen, many of you have seen, and it's a very big question. There are, it started really a bunch of years ago, about 15 years ago, screen Sefer Torahs, screen printing. That means somebody came up with a process of writing Sefer Torah, which is very easy and it's halakhically very questionable. What they did was, there's this, I don't know the proper words to use for it, but they had stencil this basically with very small tiny holes in it. And every page of Sefer Torah had its own frame and its own stencil, I think that's the word to use for it. And you would put it on a parchment that is kasher, and lined, and you just go, no, you just go, there's ink already inside. He presses the ink into the small holes, and it injects basically the ink in onto the parchment, kosher parchment, and you end up with one of the most beautiful ktav yads that you can find in literally one. The whole thing maybe takes 3 minutes to set it up properly. That's the kunst. The actual thing takes 5 seconds, right? But set it up properly, they will be online and so on. And there you have, 3 amudim, 3 columns of Sefer Torah already, all in one shot. That's of course, the Sefer Torah like that could be sold for, $5,000 instead of 50. So that is a very big question, whether or not that Sefer Torah is kasher, because is that considered ktiva? Is that considered writing, or is that considered shvicha? You're pouring the ink. It's not the maaseh ktiva. There are those who allow it. Majority do not allow it. So that's something to be careful when you buy a Sefer Torah, to be mindful of that. That's A. B. Perhaps many of you have seen the short video that was released several years ago. Also, by now it's about, I think, 5 years at least, of a mechanical hand, a machine, writing, actually with a kulmus, writing Sefer Torah in a very fast pace, right? And the whole thing is automated. You have a long surface that the Sefer Torah is basically spread on it, and it's held, and the surface basically moves, and there's this robotic hand that writes the otiot one after the other in a very efficient, consistent, clean, and beautiful way. Is that kasher? Right? So that, of course, is even more complicated because there's no human power immediately attached to this. We discussed this before, of whether or not programming a computer is considered my maaseh or not. When we spoke about the shizira and the making of the tzitziot, when you have a machine made strings of tzitzit, is that considered lishma? Is that not considered lishma? We spoke about hand matzah versus machine matzah, if it's considered lishma for Leil Pesach, for the first 2 nights of Pesach. We mentioned Rabbi Shaul that discusses this at length, and he seemed to have held that pressing buttons is not considered my maaseh at all. Others disagree to some extent. We spoke about the machloket between star K and OU when it comes to Pat Israel on baking companies that are far from any Jewish settlement, and the star K uses the light bulbs versus OU that has a control panel, basically that's controlled from Manhattan, from their main office. Whether that is considered your maaseh, and so on. So that really affects this as well, and perhaps those Sefer Torahs will be pasul according to many shitot, and nobody would want to buy a Sefer Torah for a community like that. So therefore, you have to be mindful of all of those items when you purchase a Sefer Torah. Not just the fact of the goyim, but some simple individuals are approached by people who take advantage of the ignorance among less religious communities, and they sell them these Sefer Torahs for very expensive price. And really, the truth is that the Sefer Torah is not a lot of time has been. Usually, when a sofer writes a Sefer Torah, it takes them up to a year to write it. So it's a year of their entire work that they're selling. So fine, it's more expensive, because otherwise, if you don't pay that amount, you're not going to have good sofrim that are good at what they do to write for you. They'll all go write mezuzahs and sell them, and they'll make more money. Because mezuzah takes about 2 hours to write for a good sofer, versus a Sefer Torah that is over 250 columns, and every column is much more than a mezuzah. So they have to charge a proper amount of money to be able to continue, will be kedai for them, will be worth their while to write it, versus something that was done by a robot. They could go to sleep at night and wake up in the morning and you have half a Sefer Torah written already for you. And of course that is something to be mindful as well.
Programming of the robot is considered a maaseh, so therefore the person.
Not the programming, but perhaps the push of a button at the end that you push and it starts writing. That maybe is considered my maaseh, right? Oh, you see, you don't like it, so don't buy one of those Sefer Torahs. I have no problem with that.
You say it works with matzah, right? Or some old.
No, we mentioned that there are those who have a machinery that the button is made in a way that it's a lever basically. You have to hold it down. If you let go of it, it will stop, and so on. So again, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritties of that sugya, but nevertheless something to be mindful of as as we learn these halachot. And again, the Mishna Berurah just says, if you find the goy selling them a little bit more than the price as we mentioned, you buy it, but not a lot more, because you do not want to encourage theft. And at the same time, the Mishna Berurah says in Ot Yud Chet, even though that you don't want to buy it for a higher price, don't drop it right away, even though that he says a large price. Maybe the goy is Persian and he wants to just bargain with you, and you bargain him down to the price. Don't be too Ashkenazi about it. When he says some large price, you say no, have a nice day and leave it. Try to bring him down, and Yinhag by Minhag Bizayon is something big that we are mindful. We don't want the goy to be disrespectful towards the tefillin and mezuzah and Sefer Torah. Therefore, we try to bargain them down, but at the end of the day, we're not going to pay much more than the market value, because that Hashem will continue this in the days to come.